Good morning, Brandcliff House. You've often heard on in-flight notifications, they say to you, put on your own oxygen mask before assisting others. And the motivation of that statement is that you're in no position to help others if you yourself are not able to function. And in our current situation, we might find ourselves facing feelings of anxiety, fear, sadness, worry. We might feel overwhelmed. And while we struggle with these emotions ourselves, we are unable to provide support for others in that same position. And the reason for that is that our brains are not wired to handle these vast amounts of information and the results of emotions that are flowing through us due to our current circumstances in the world today. And the reason that we feel overwhelmed by these feelings is because of something called brain bandwidth that maybe we lack. And the word bandwidth refers to the amount of or volume of data that is transferred between 2 points in a certain time. And we usually talk about bandwidth today in terms of the internet and our internet access and it's not the internet speed, but the amount of data we could download and transfer. As an example, what bandwidth refers to, if you wanted to download transfer 1 gigabyte movie back in 1993, you would have had a 56 kilobit per second internet line, and that would have taken you 42 and a half hours to download a 1 gigabyte movie back in 1993 because your bandwidth was so narrow. Today, to download the same volume, a gigabyte takes you 7 minutes on a residential fiber line. Another example is if you were downloading the Call of Duty Modern Warfare game, which is 190 gigabytes, and if you were to try that on a 1993 internet line, which was 56 kilobits per second, that would have taken you over 8,000 hours, and that's 337 days to download. Today it takes you maybe 22 hours on a fairly fast internet line. But enough about bandwidth. So we lack the emotional and sometimes the brain bandwidth to meet these increased needs of those around us. These include our friends, our families, our partners, our teachers, our parents, and other people. We are all just trying to adjust to life, to new learning environments, to ways of working and learning. And we now have to deal with this anxiety that we face due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's just what we are facing to get through the day. So while we try and we may want to put the needs of others over our own well-being, that's not much good, and we cannot do much, we cannot help much if we have not practiced self-care for ourselves. And how can we do this? How can we make sure that we have put on our oxygen mask so that we can help others? Well, the first thing that we need to do is make sure we have a well-nourished and well-rested body. That means eating healthily, eating regularly with nutritious foods, and sleeping enough, getting enough rest, which is actually quite hard to do sometimes, and also get some exercise now and then. The next thing we need to do is filter out all this information so that our brain can have time to focus on what needs to be focused on. We're bombarded by tweets, by posts, by news articles, by television, radio, Netflix. There's so much information coming in, and that gives us decision fatigue where we don't know what to focus on. We don't know what to choose. And what we can do is we can take away some of those decisions from ourselves. For instance, make a default decision for what you're going to wear that day or what you're going to have for breakfast. For example, on Monday I wear these jeans, and then you're taking away unnecessary choices from your brain so that your brain can have time to actually relax and focus on things that are more important. You can also narrow down your decisions for what to eat. For example, breakfast, you can just have the same thing every day. At least then that narrows down some of the decisions that we face. And we can translate that to other aspects of our lives as well. Last thing we can do is we can just try and focus. So instead of trying to multitask and do 1,000 things at once, which is completely impossible, we can make time for ourselves every day, block off 30 to 45 minutes for for yourself to do a task, whether it's studying, whether it's working on a project, whether it's doing something that you are invested in on this, as a hobby. Block off time, schedule that time, separate the time by brief breaks where you maybe go for some exercise or have a nap. And by doing that, you can focus completely on one task, and that means putting away the cell phone, turning off the TV, and actually getting your brain to focus on the task at hand, instead of trying to deal with all the other things around you and the phone and messages and the TV. So by staying healthy, staying well rested, and avoiding this information overload, you can actually handle the stressful times in a more sustainable way, which means you can deal with the stress a bit more healthily. So by doing that, we'll not only be better equipped to cope with the world around us, but we will also have the spare bandwidth to meet the emotional needs of those around us. Thank you very much. Have a good week and stay warm. We'll catch up soon.